Start of the game, every player draws one card and puts it in front of his head. They guess if it's red or if it's black. If they guess correct, they win the round. If more than one player guesses the correct color, another card gets drawn and they guess for the correct number. The player that gets the closest to their number or the number itself wins the round. After that, the decks get shuffled and every player gets 7 cards. The player that won the first round picks the trump card. The trump card is always a number and not a sign. So it's always 6, so every 6 is a trump card. The player that doesn't pick the trump card always starts off the game. You can only throw the card with the same number or with the same sign on top of this one. So, for example, the other player throws on his ace of hearts, and I throw on my 6 of hearts. After that, the round gets stopped, and another card gets turned over. This card is the rule card. For example, 2 means that because I played the trump card, can give out 2 cards to somebody else. Every card has its own rule. The 2 is I give 2 cards to somebody else, or the person that plays the trump card gives 2 cards to somebody else. 3 is the person that plays the trump card can pick 1 card and see it. 4 is the next round. Every player that can't play a card has to draw 1 extra. 5 is every player turns over their hand, shuffles it, and takes out 1 card. That card, if it's the highest card wins, so the lowest card draws 1 card. 6 is both players swap hands. 7 is every player tries to put their finger in the air as fast as possible. So they do this, and the player that does it as last has to put his finger in the air for the rest of the game. If there's multiple 7s in a game and there are only 2 players, every player has to do it, regardless of being fast or not. 8 is 1 player has to skip the round, so the player that plays the trump card can choose which player skips the next round. The 9 card is I see what you don't see, so 1 player has to say I see something that you don't see, and the other player has to guess in like 10 seconds. If they don't guess in time, they have to draw a card, otherwise the player that started the game has to draw a card. The 10 is the characters card. So if the 10 gets drawn, 1 card of the characters card gets turned over. For example, this one is Star Wars, and the players get a chance to say a character from that franchise, and the last one, or the person that can't say any characters anymore, loses the round. The jack is the next round will be played with the cards turned over. So the first card gets like this, but players will put their cards turned over and say what's on that. And if they can lie, and other players can say that you lied, and if they catch you lying, the round gets the round's over, and the player that lied has to take 2 cards. But if they don't lie and the other player says he lied, the player that said that he lied has to take 2 cards. The queen is the music card. So you turn on 1 card of music. In this case, it's AC/DC, and like the characters card, both players just say songs from that band. The king gets drawn. A mini game will be played. So let's say this is the deck. A card will get turned over. Like for example, the player that plays the trump card gets the first draw. He turns over the cards. It's a 2. The other person turns over the cards at 3. He wins that round, but it's always best of 3. So you play another round. In this case, it's a 4. Other player turns over, it's a 5. The other player wins because he won 2 rounds. The next card is the ace. If an ace gets played after a trump card, every player that has an ace in their hand can discard it. The players that don't have an ace in their hands have to draw an extra card. And the next card is a joker. If a joker gets turned over after a trump card, if the Joker is red, every red card from every player's hand can be discarded. If it's black, every black card can be discarded. After a rule gets applied or a minigame has been played, the game goes on like normal. The player that lost the minigame or lost the rule always has to pick the new trump card. In case of like card drawing or something, the player with the most cards in his hand loses the rule, so he has to pick the new trump card. He picks the 3, for example. He always picks it before the first card gets turned over. First card gets turned over and the game goes back on until there's a 3 played, and then it's a new minigame again. The only special card during a normal game is the Joker card. If it gets played, doesn't matter on what it gets played, the player can choose the sign he wants. So for example, if he plays it on this 8, he can choose I want it to be spades, and the next player can play spades on top of it.